Now on KGW News, 3 synagogues, 2 airports, and at least 12 school districts all hit with bomb threats on the same day. Plus, a woman who got sick on vacation in Portugal is finally back in the U.S., 8 months after landing in a foreign hospital.
I cried tears when we landed in Seattle and loaded her on that ambulance to take her to the hospital.
But her battles and her family's are far from over. And later, a wild surprise in a donation bin at the Portland Rescue Mission.
The shoes are very auspicious. They are really gold.
Just wait until you hear how unique these Nikes are. We begin tonight with the latest on bomb threats sent all over the state on Monday. Thank you for joining us. I'm China Green. The FBI says within Oregon, they've counted 18 incidents impacting a dozen school districts, 3 synagogues, and 2 small regional airports. Let's get right to Alma McCarty following up on what turned out to be hoaxes. Alma.
China, although federal investigators believe none of the threats at this point were credible, that doesn't mean they didn't take them seriously. Across Oregon, students and staff evacuated schools as law enforcement came in to sweep them, which in these often rural areas depleted the few resources they have.
On Monday morning, a dozen school districts across Oregon received threatening emails alluding to bombs or explosives hidden somewhere on campus. Over in eastern Oregon, those emails arrived in Gillum County around 10 o'clock to the Arlington and Condon school districts.
That triggered a chain of events that ultimately landed law enforcement into the scope of things. We evacuated the school, did a full search of the school, evaluated what we were looking at, and ultimately determined that it was a hoax threat.
Lieutenant Tori Flory explains their agency is small, consisting of 8 full-time sworn officers, including the sheriff and himself. So they leaned on partnering agencies nearby to help.
You know, if it wasn't for the assistance and the help that we were able to get from our partnering agencies, our neighboring counties, that would run us really thin in an event like this.
The depletion and distraction of law enforcement and public safety resources is very, very impactful.
FBI Special Agent in charge for the state of Oregon, Kieran Ramsey, says they're investigating these and several other hoax threats, which also impacted 3 synagogues and 2 small regional airports.
Most, if not all, talked about some kind of bombing or potential bombing. We do have a number of threats that used very similar, if not the exact same verbiage. And then in some instances, we've thus far been able to trace back one IP, which is located outside the United States.
Ramsey says they're still piecing together the full picture to determine if all of the threats are connected and who is behind them.
Especially when we talk about the school context. Unfortunately, we have seen tragedy after tragedy across the entire United States, to include here historically in Oregon, where we are not able at all to simply dismiss a threat out of hand as a nuisance in that school setting. We just can't.
Ramsey said PDX was not threatened, but he could not reveal which airports received the hoax threats. We've learned locally congregations Neve Shalom and Beth Israel were recipients, and Portland police swept those buildings and did not find any immediate threat. China.
Alma, thank you. In your headlines tonight, the school board for Portland Public Schools says they'll meet later this week to name an interim superintendent. Current Superintendent Guadalupe Guerrero announced yesterday that he will be stepping down from the role effective January 16th. We caught up with him today to ask him about his time with the district.
We're in the business of continuous improvement, so I'm sure there's lots of things I could have done a little bit better, but I'm also proud of, where I did put my energy and what we were able to get through.
One member of the school board says Guerrero made the decision to resign on his own and not because of orders from the board. And the chief of staff for Portland Public Schools is also leaving his job the same day as Superintendent Guerrero. In fact, Jonathan Garcia announced on Twitter today his last day will be February 16th. Garcia has been working for PPS since 2017. He says he's proud of the work he's done over the years for students of color and their families. A student at Evergreen College in Olympia is dead from carbon monoxide poisoning on campus, and at least 3 others had to go to the hospital. This happened on Monday night inside student housing. 21-year-old Jonathan Rodriguez, who was from DuPont, was killed. Campus officials say a contractor had responded to carbon monoxide alarms earlier in the day. It was a close call for a person visiting a patient at OHSU when a tree crashed onto their car. Look at these photos here. This happened around 11:30 Monday morning as the driver was headed to Dornbecker Children's Hospital. Now, incredibly, the driver was not hurt. They said they were able to slide out of the seat and get out of the back of the car. Matt?
Thanks so much, China. It was a beautiful day around the Northwest. We had the clear sky, east winds, as you can see looking to the south from our camera at Timberline Live, those low clouds blowing through the passes there, and those east winds were strong in the big pass we call the Columbia River Gorge, right? Crown Point 58, Corbett 53, even in the Portland area would gust over 30 miles an hour. So it was a very windy day, but a very clear day and warm. We were in the 50s too, as you know. So the east winds, they will weaken, but there are really no big storms coming at us. Now, why is that? Where have they all gone? Well, a lot of them are heading south into California. We will be dry and mild with east winds on Friday. This next system, again, California bound. Now, as we go into next week, we should get some showers and some mountain snow Sunday and then Monday into Tuesday. But then the next one after that, more split flow, sending that system south into California too. We'll get a little bit of valley rain and mountain snow from that one as well. There is hope for a stronger system coming in before Christmas. That's one model solution. Another model solution saying, yeah, not so much. More warm, dry weather. So we'll have to wait and see. That's about 10 days out how that one plays out. But the headlines, we get a few sprinkles early Thursday morning, more east winds Friday. And then finally, we'll go back to this. We'll get some mountain snow and some valley rain again early next week, China.
Matt, thank you. Homeless people in Seaside are still recovering from the recent rainstorms, and the city's limited resources are making it difficult for not only those living outside, but neighbors too. The city is now moving people from a homeless camp that's prone to flooding to a site on higher ground, but they never told neighbors about the move. The city manager says that they're reeling and feeling the pressure from all sides, including the state, to find quick solutions.
It wouldn't have done us much good to get input from the neighborhood because we understand the neighborhood's not going to want it, and we can understand that.
Nobody ever said that they were moving this here. The city has done, it seems like the city has done this over and over again.
The city is reviewing a proposal to get state to get more funding for a warming center, and they're working to turn a hotel into transitional housing. But like most things, that will all take time. In an update tonight, we're hearing from the family of a Vancouver woman who has been in a coma overseas since May. She suffered a medical emergency while on vacation, and now the family tells us that they were finally able to fly her back to Seattle in an air ambulance last night. Daisy Caballero joins us in the studio with that update. And Daisy, this has got to feel like a long time coming for this family.
And it absolutely has, China. The road to get Diana James back to the States has been anything but easy. But after 7 months and 21 agonizing days of waiting, they were finally approved for a nearly $150,000 loan to get her back home after her insurance wouldn't pay the bill.
One of the most gratifying experiences to finally see this come to fruition.
After nearly 8 months of being stuck in Braga, Portugal, Diana James of Vancouver is finally back in the U.S. after suffering a brain bleed that put her into a coma.
It feels surreal to finally be on this next chapter of this journey to get her medical treatment.
Because of Diana's medical state, she had to be transported by air ambulance back to the U.S., something her daughter, Megan Kunze, has been advocating for since May.
I think she was aware. She kind of gave me some looks yesterday when we boarded that plane.
And it all finally happened after their 20-hour flight landed in Seattle Monday night.
I cried tears when we landed in Seattle and loaded her on that ambulance to take her to the hospital. It was a very emotional day for sure.
But the road to get here wasn't easy after Diana's insurance company denied paying for the bill to medically transport her 3 separate times, leaving the family no other choice than to apply for a $144,000 medical repatriation loan.
Even though she's home, our commitment to her doesn't stop. We have to continue to fundraise. We have to continue to advocate for her care here in the U.S. and make sure that she gets the treatment that she needs.
Diana is now at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle as they have a specialty program for neuro injuries. One day, the family hopes Diana can once again live an independent life and be able to hug her grandchildren.
We will write a book about this one day, about this journey, and people will not believe the challenges that we face.
Now, Megan tells me they plan to open up a nonprofit to help other families going through the difficult journey they went through. You can find my previous reporting on Diana's journey and ways you can also help the family on KGW.com.
Daisy, thank you. All this week, KGW environmental reporter Cale Williams is taking a closer look at the country's now 50-year-old Endangered Species Act and the impact that it's had here in the Pacific Northwest. Yesterday, Cale focused on the spotted owl. Today, he's looking at the gray wolf. Wolves were pretty much eradicated from Oregon more than 70 years ago after they were aggressively hunted down because of the threat they posed to livestock. But they started returning to the state around 2010, and it led to some of the same tensions that existed before. Cale spoke to the Wolf Committee chair for the Oregon Cattlemen's Association.
I cannot underestimate the emotional trauma, the stress that the wolf is putting on ranchers. It is a game changer.
You can watch Cale's full report next on The Story starting at 6:30. And we'll also hear from the other side of the story, including a group that helped bring wolves back to this part of the country. Still to come on KGW News at 6, a man working at the Portland Rescue Mission hits gold in the donations bin with a pair of Nike Air Jordans.
They immediately authenticated them and said, no, these are really special, really rare. Please take care of them.
Now the shoes worth thousands are up for auction.